Welcome to Christian Living Journal, where we reflect on faith, history, and God's guiding voice, even in times of noise and division. Today's episode is titled Before the First Shot. It's based on a song I wrote, which you'll hear shortly. But this isn't a song explanation, this is the true story that inspired it. A story most of us were never taught. South Carolina, 1833. A moment of warning, a chance for mercy, a narrow escape from war, and what it reveals about our own time. Let's set the scene. In the early 1830s, the United States was still young. The Constitution wasn't even 50 years old. The Revolutionary War wasn't a distant memory. Many veterans were still alive. But already cracks were forming, especially between the northern and southern states. The issue? Tariffs, specifically high federal taxes on imported goods that southern states felt hurt their economies. In 1832, Congress passed what became known as the Tariff of Abominations, and South Carolina rebelled. They claimed the right to nullify or reject that federal law within their borders. It was the first test of federal unity, and it nearly led to civil war. South Carolina's leaders, many of them wealthy planters, met in defiance of Washington. They called for a special convention. They declared the tariffs unconstitutional. They passed the Ordinance of Nullification and warned the federal government to back off. President Andrew Jackson, a Southerner himself, was furious. He believed in a strong union and made it clear, disunion by armed force is treason. He ordered federal troops and warships to the Charleston harbor. He asked Congress for power to use military force. For a moment, war felt imminent. But something unusual happened. South Carolina's leaders, though fiery, still feared God, and before marching to war, they declared a statewide day of fasting and prayer. Can you imagine that today? They humbled themselves. They asked God for mercy, for another way, and through back-channel negotiation and grace on both sides, a compromise was reached. Tariff rates would gradually decrease. South Carolina backed down. No blood was shed. No war began. Mercy and forgiveness held the line. That winter in 1833 was a turning point, not because of what happened, but because of what didn't. It was a warning, a preview of what could happen if pride and division went unchecked. But here's the tragedy. The lesson didn't stick. Fast forward to 1860, nearly 30 years later, the same themes returned: sectional division, economic fear, political hostility, a breakdown in trust. But this time, there was no day of prayer. There were no appeals for mercy, only speeches, signatures, and cannons. The Civil War began in Charleston, the very harbor where mercy had once held back fire. The silence of 1833 was gone. If you study the Bible, you'll see this pattern. Before judgment comes, there's always a warning, always a chance to turn back. Think of Nineveh. Think of Jerusalem. Think of Egypt before the plagues. And think of God's words to his people. I have no pleasure in the death of the wicked. Turn back from your evil ways, for why will you die? 1833 was one of those warnings. It's not just a historical footnote. It's a spiritual template. God always sends mercy before the first shot. But mercy must be received, or it will eventually be removed. But why does this matter to us? We live in a time of deep division once again. Lines are drawn politically, socially, and even spiritually. We're not lining up muskets yet, but we're drawing swords with our words. Families are splitting. Churches are quiet. Trust is collapsing. And once again, we're at the edge, not just as a nation, but as individuals. The Spirit is still whispering, there's still time to turn. There's still time for mercy. We can still forgive each other and work to build bridges. We may never hear a canon, but we have the stark examples of the past. And the consequences are real, and we must heed them. In just a moment, I'm going to play the song Before the First Shot. Let it speak to your heart. It's not a lecture, it's a reminder that before wars begin, before relationships break, before churches fall, there's always a moment to listen.
Before the Civil War's first cannon cracked the morning sky, South Carolina had already stood on the edge once before. A moment to turn, a quiet warning from heaven. Some lessons echo through the years, if only willing to hear them.
It began with fields heavy under new tariffs. Planters feared losing the lifeblood of their land. Leaders gathered by candlelight, voices trembled between pride and prayer. They called for a day of fasting and solemn pleading, asking God to light another path in war. Jackson's guns waited cold and watchful in the harbor, but no shot rang out that winter's night. A fragile peace held, mercy hung in the air. A warning spoken in silence, a chance to learn before the first shot. Before the first shot rang, we heard the warning bell. Pride can build a prison where brothers' blood will dwell. We can choose the silence, we can stay the hand. Echoes call us gently to turn and hear this land.
Years passed and the old fear deepened like roots in dark soul. A new president's words felt like distant thunder. Leaders gathered again in crowded halls, but prayer gave way to final declarations. No day of fasting, no plea for higher mercy, only signatures sealing the path to fire. Charleston's cannons thundered at dawn, smoke coiled above the harbor like a curse. No turning back, no gentle retreat from the edge. A nation split and hearts turned to stone, the warning lost beneath the roar of guns.
The lesson was carved in the silence before the flame, a chance to turn, to hear each other, to bend. God does not delight in the blood of His children. He whispers mercy even at the edge of war.
Now we gather in glowing screens and crowded feeds, drawing new lines sharper than any blade can cut. Voices raised in rage or righteous pride, forgetting the price paid when words turn into wounds. We stand once more at the quiet edge. We feel the pull toward breaking what we should mend. May we learn from the silent harbor and winter's pause. Hold back the first shot, choose the harder peace, and keep our hands from brothers' blood. Before the first shot rang, we heard the warning bell. Pride can build a prison where brothers' blood will dwell. We can choose the silence, we can
heroes call us gently to turn and heal this land. Before the first shot, there is always a moment to choose. May we hear the echo and choose life every time.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Christian Living Journal. Remember, history doesn't just repeat, it warns. In 1833, it wasn't just about tariffs. It was about pride, prayer, mercy, and forgiveness. And so it is today. Let's be the ones who turn before the next shot. Until next time, may truth guide you, may mercy reach you, and may God's Spirit keep you from the edge.